What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. It is Friday, April the 26th, 2024, 7:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the Voice Man Studios in Toronto, Canada. And this is episode 254 of McRae Live. And we're talking prequels tonight. We're talking prequels. I'm feeling a bit prickly today. I'm feeling a little prickly. So I needed to jump on and talk about this. And we'll see if anybody shows up. It's Friday night. We'll see if anybody shows up and anybody rolls on in and wants to hang out. We'll see how the evening rolls on here. So episode 254 of McRae Live. Thank you for joining me. And news came out today. Was it today? I think it was today, that the 1968 classic, one of the greatest psychological thrillers of all time, Rosemary's Baby, directed by Roman Polanski, 1968, is getting a prequel direct to Paramount Plus. So this is not going to the movie theaters, at least not yet. Maybe that might change in the future. I don't know. I'm not sure what Paramount wants to do. But as of right now, it will be released this year, just in time for Halloween on Paramount Plus. That's the game plan anyway. That's the game plan. And so, I have some thoughts. I made a couple of tweets today, and I have some thoughts on this. And, I'm just going to be straight up and honest with you. I mean, obviously, it's no secret. If you follow me for any length of time, you know that I am not a huge fan of prequels or sequels. That does not mean that there are not sequels that I don't, or that I don't like. There are. That doesn't mean that there aren't some prequel TV shows or a movie here or there that I like, even the horror genre. It's not that they don't exist at all. They do, but I am not, generally speaking, it's just who I am when it comes to horror. And again, as I said yesterday on the show, I know this because I've been doing this now for a long time. I mean, the YouTube thing here. I know that there is a large portion of my audience that may be frustrated with me by that, because there is a large portion of my audience that loves all that kind of stuff. More sequels, more movies, more of this. Halloween 10, 12, 13, 14. Dave, have you seen Saw 10? It was great. Have you seen Saw 38? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's different strokes for different folks. But I always feel that, there's always a part of me that feels kind of bad jumping on, and even though I shouldn't, because this is who I am and I'm being my authentic self in terms of how I feel about this. But I do know I feel kind of bad sometimes, because I know that there's a large portion of my viewers that would want nothing more from me than to be excited about everything and anything. And unfortunately, I just don't feel that way. And now this does not mean in and of itself that this prequel to Rosemary's Baby is going to be crap. That doesn't mean that at all. And I never root for anything to fail. Unlike some of these other channels out there that are, that are in the culture war, that are rooting for movies to fail, I never want a movie to fail. Never. And they could make a sequel to Halloween Ends. How? Michael's dead. I don't know. But let's say they did. We're making a sequel to Halloween Ends. I don't want it to fail. I would want nothing more than that to be one of the greatest fucking sequels of all time, right? I'm not in the game of wanting things to fail. But certainly, the idea of a prequel or, a sequel, I'm very apprehensive about it. And I'm apprehensive about it because we look at the patterns. Generally speaking, these things don't go well. And it's show business. So they are in the business of making money and utilizing. I think the thing that I find frustrating, one of the things that I find exceptionally frustrating, is this game, and I call it a game, and I understand it from a business perspective, certainly, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't be making the same executive decisions if I was in that position. I understand it's show business, right? You have shareholders you need to appeal to. you are in a position where you need to make money. And Rosemary's Baby it's like The Shining, right? Everybody knows The Shining. Everybody knows Rosemary's Baby. But Dave, Dr. Sleep was amazing. Yeah, look, whether it was amazing or not, and whether you like Dr. Sleep or not, really isn't the point. And I'll talk more about this here in a second. But again, it's obviously my opinion. It should go without saying. But let me jump over to the other screen and Rosemary's Baby prequel, Apartment 7A. That's the name of the movie, Apartment 7A, starring Julia Garner, to premiere on Paramount Plus this fall. So again, it's a streaming film. It's a creepy little image. Love it. It says Rosemary's Baby prequel, Apartment 7A, starring Julia Garner, and directed by Natalie Erica James, will premiere exclusively on Paramount Plus ahead of the Halloween season. Roman Polanski's 1968 horror classic was produced by Paramount, starring Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes. I think that's how you pronounce that. I might be getting a bit of it wrong in terms of the emphasis. Cassavetes, I think. Cassavetes, I think. As a young couple who are trying to start a family, but find themselves tormented by strange neighbors. Now, if you have not seen Rosemary's Baby, I highly recommend it. It's one of the great psychological thrillers of all time. Now, of course, it's directed by Roman Polanski, and there's Roman Polanski and that whole Roman Polanski thing. But nonetheless, it's a great film. And it's one of my favorite psychological horror films of all time. Of course, it's dated, meaning it's 1968. So if you are younger and you don't like watching older movies, well, then it may not appeal to you because, the acting is a bit more theatrical and, it's a different time, a different era. But the story is fantastic. There's terrific mood and atmosphere in it. It's creepy. It's psychological. It's nuanced. It's slow burn. It's right up my alley. It's a great film. According to an official logline, this is for Apartment 7A. Apartment 7A is set in 1965 New York City and tells the story prior to the legendary horror classic Rosemary's Baby, exploring what happened in the apartment before Rosemary moved in. Okay. When a struggling young dancer suffers a devastating injury, she finds herself drawn in by dark forces when a peculiar, well-connected older couple promises her a shot at fame. Okay. Interesting. That's who's all in it. Apartment 7A is the perfect way to kick off the Halloween season, said Jeff Grossman, Executive Vice President of Programming at Paramount Plus, in a statement announcing the streaming release. Director Natalie Erica James and the prodigious creative team have crafted a chilling and clever new entry into the genre. Apartment 7A is a Platinum Dunes and Sunday night production from producers John Krasinski, Allison Seeger, Michael Bay, Andrew Form, and Brian Fuller. James co-wrote the script with Christian White and Skylar James, and executive producers include Vicky D. Rock and Alexa Ginsberg. Okay, so there's definitely some talent there behind it on the producing side. The director, Natalie Erica, what's her name here? Oh, Natalie, I want to get you. Hang on. Natalie Erica James. Now, she had a film. This is not her first movie. She did direct, there was a movie from a few years ago that did very well critically. It's got like 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, very similar in terms of like a eerie psychological kind of movie. So I'm very curious to see what she does with this. But here's the situation. So, there's a log line. So this is not a synopsis, okay? Although it's kind of a glorified log line. It's a little longer than a log. Well, it's a log line, but it's a bit longer than a log line, usually. But no, I guess not. It's a couple sentences. Yeah, okay. Apartment 7A, okay, set in 1965 New York City and tells the story prior to the legendary horror classic Rosemary's Baby, exploring what happened in the apartment before Rosemary moved in. Okay. Question number 1. Do we care? Does anybody care? Does anybody want this? Now, this is not a knock against Natalie. This is not a knock against her as a filmmaker and whatever they're going to do or whatever ideas they have. Apparently, they have something really cool they want to bring. Okay, but I don't know that. But why are we doing this? But don't you want to know what happened before? No, I don't. I don't care. Does anybody care? Were these questions that we were asking? Why are we doing this? Right? That's number one. Why are we doing this? Does anybody care? I don't. When a struggling young dancer suffers a devastating injury, she finds herself drawn in by dark forces when a peculiar, well-connected older couple promises her a shot at fame. Great, tell that story. Disconnected from Rosemary's Baby. Tell that story. That's interesting. But why does it have to be a prequel to Rosemary's Baby? Why do you have to set it in the same universe? Is it because of IP recognition? Rosemary's Baby. Maybe we need to... you know what I'm saying? I have yet to, I won't say that. I will say this. It is very rare that I watch a prequel to a horror film, horror classic, that enriches the original for me. It's very rare. Now, again, I'm speaking for myself, okay? But listening to that log line, now we don't have a synopsis. There's a lot of nuances and details that are not there, okay? How they're going to connect it to Rosemary's Baby. Is it the same couple? I guess it would presumably be the same older couple. Well, it's not going to be the same actors because, those actors are dead. So I'm assuming it's the same older couple. But why are we doing this? Who's this for? Why is this story being told? Why don't you just tell the story and let people draw parallels to Rosemary's Baby as they see fit? But if there's nothing that's direct, let it stand on its own. So you do not have Rosemary's Baby marketing behind it. You don't have voice actors like me on commercials saying, before Rosemary's Baby, there was, whatever the case is, right? You don't have that. So you don't allow, if this is a great idea and a great story, then allow it to stand on its own. Right? Now, again, does that mean that when it comes out, I'm going to watch it and hate it? No, I could watch it and think it's fantastic. It's the principle of what I'm talking about. It's trying to steer away from always going back, right? And let's move forward, Now, The First Omen came out, right? Now, I have yet to see The First Omen, okay? But I can still talk about this because it's the principle of what I'm talking about. A lot of people loved The First Omen. Right? Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's like 80-something%. It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So all those people that hate Rotten Tomatoes, love Rotten Tomatoes when it, it sides with them. But nonetheless, it's done very well critically, right? The First Omen, great. Now, I've yet to see it, okay? But somebody tweeted to me today and said, Dave, you've got to check out The First Omen, but don't worry about it. Okay, it doesn't, reveal too much. It doesn't, answer any questions that shouldn't be answered. It's still kind of ambiguous and it's still great. And the impression I got from this individual's tweet was he said, and the only thing they really do is just kind of play in the universe with the same rules. But it's really, it stands on. It's okay. It's really great. Well, great. Then why is it called The First Omen? Why is it connected to the Omen at all? Right? That's my point, is that if it's a great movie, then it can be a great movie without it being called The First Omen connected to the Omen. Call it something unless it is intricately tied with the same actors, which we know that's not happening, right? And it intricately, and it's just this woven thing that's always been there. My God, I can't tell you for how long I've wanted a prequel to the fucking Omen. You know what I mean? I needed to know what happened before Gregory Peck was... No, nobody's asking for this. And you say, yeah, but Dave, it's really good. Okay, but the question then becomes, if I watched it not knowing it was a prequel to The Omen, would I still think it was great? And inevitably the answer is yes. Well, then why connect it to The Omen? Why can't we just move forward with stop using name recognition to help drive the marketing and get asses into the seats? Let things stand on their own. It's the same issue I had with Black Christmas 2019, which was, Jesus, it has nothing to do with Black Christmas. Nothing. Yeah, but Dave, it's a yeah, but it sucked. It sucked. And it didn't have to suck. And it didn't suck. I'm not saying it sucked because I'm sitting here saying, oh, but, you know, it's woke and woke and woke. I'm not a culture war channel. That doesn't mean that wokeness doesn't exist. Oh, it exists. Is there a bit of a problem? Oh, there's a bit of a problem. I'm simply saying that that movie could have been not bad if it didn't have the Black Christmas angle to it, right? If they had leaned more heavily into the sleigh girls and you know, maybe didn't go quite as woke. But I'm just saying, they tacked on Black Christmas to sell it. Now, maybe that's not the best example because it's still not a great movie. Maybe that's not the best example, but it's the principle of riding the coattails of IPs is what I'm saying. Now, when it succeeds, nobody cares, right? If The First Omen had sucked, and again, I haven't seen it, I'm going based on the likelihood that I will probably think it's not bad, although I am very picky. You guys know that. I'm very picky. But based on the reviews and what people are saying, okay, let's say it's really great, okay? Okay, well, yes. When teams win, right? It's like sports, right? You know, when your team wins, it's like, yeah! As soon as your team loses 2 in a row, fire the coach, fire the GM, they fucking suck. That guy's not doing shit. Fuck him, fuck the... You know what I'm saying? You know, but the second they start, and then they lose 2 in a row, 3 in a row, the team sucks. They win 3 in a row right after that. See, I told you, great coach. Told you. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. It really is, right? So if The First Omen had failed, see, they should, why didn't they just leave it alone? Why didn't they just leave it alone? Why didn't they just leave the Omen alone? What's going on? I mean, this is what generally happens, right? But The First Omen apparently was really good. Okay, so it's fine. It's good. Yeah, it's good. My point is, if watching The First Omen, okay, is, you know, you watch it and it is able to stand on its own as just a great psychological horror, possession, demon, devil, pregnant, you know, whatever the case is. If it can stand on its own without Richard Donner, you know, his original 1976, then why are we connecting it at all? Just call it something else. Look at Immaculate with Sydney Sweeney, right? Now, again, I haven't seen that yet, but apparently that was pretty good. That's not connected to anything, but it's still pretty good. And so I get frustrated because, you know, and I know that there's a large portion of my viewers that will agree with me. There are some that won't. They'll think I'm too much of a hard ass, that I'm too, you know, I'm a party pooper and, you know, but I can't deny how I feel. I heard this news today and I rolled my eyes and I thought, I'm not rolling my eyes. It's not personal. It's not, I don't know these, you know, filmmakers, right? The director, I mean, like I said, apparently she's pretty good. She's pretty talented. That's awesome. Female director, that's good. We got to get more of them in there, horror especially. That's great. Her last movie's got like 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's great. It's not personal. It's just, why can't this just be an original movie not connected to Rosemary's Baby? Why are we doing a prequel to Rosemary's Baby? Like, is anybody wanting this? Does anybody ask this? But Dave, what if it's good? Yeah, but what if if it can be good connected as a prequel, it can be good without it. Just write a great but Dave, it's a great psychological, great. Then just deliver that. It's about this dancer who's injured. Great, deliver that. Make it all the same, but just don't connect it to Rosemary's Baby. So that means you got to maybe change, the character names a bit, or you set it in and just let people, because really what this sounds like based on the log line, and again, it's just a log line, okay? It's just a log line. But when I read the log line to you, okay? When I read the log line to you, which is this, okay? When I read Apartment 7A is set in 1965 New York City and tells the story prior to the legendary horror classic Rosemary's Baby, exploring what happened in the apartment before Rosemary moved in. When a struggling young dancer suffers a devastating injury, she finds herself drawn in by dark forces when a peculiar, well-connected older couple promises her a shot at fame. This kind of sounds like just a remake of Rosemary's Baby, but a remake / reimagining, right? So it's the premise is not the exact same. It's not about a woman who's married to an actor who's a struggling actor who basically sells his soul to the devil, and sacrifices Rosemary, and she, It's not that story, but it's similar, as in it's another woman who's moved into an apartment building and there's an older couple who promises her, so I'm sitting there, I mean, it kind of feels like we kind of want to remake Rosemary's Baby, but we don't want to remake Rosemary's Baby because that probably won't go over well. So why don't we kind of remake Rosemary's Baby and just call it a prequel? Like that, the log line feels like that a little bit, right? You know what I mean? And so I just don't know who this is for. And like I said, they say they've got a great premise. Okay, then just make a great psychological horror movie. And then we could watch it and be like, oh, it's kind of like, it's got a Rosemary's Baby vibe, but you don't need to connect it. And I know I can be out on a very thin branch when I feel this way. And again, please understand that I'm not attacking anybody personally. Don't misinterpret my passion for this kind of thing as somehow I'm being condescending and pretentious. That's not what this is about. This is just me really feeling strongly about this kind of stuff because generally speaking, most horror prequels don't do that well. Now, maybe this will be an exception to the rule, right? The First Omen apparently was really good, right? But again, that always leads into my next question, which is, well, how connected is The First Omen? Right? When you watch it, do you really feel like you're living in that universe? Or is it vaguely connected? Right? And it's just that kind of thing where I'm like, well, then just make an original piece. It kind of feels like they want to have their cake and eat it too. We want to deliver something original, but we need name recognition. So we'll just kind of make it a prequel. And, when you go to the Wikipedia page of Rosemary's Baby, and here's another thing too, like I said on Twitter today, or X, or whatever it is, I'll read you my tweet. If you follow me on X, you'll have seen this. If you don't follow me on X and you have X, and what are you doing? But I said this. I said, Rosemary's Baby is getting a sequel. Sigh. I despise, generally speaking, the culture we've created that obsesses over what happened before through prequel films and TV shows. This need to have every detail filled in and every question answered destroys any sense of mystique that was created. We must learn to accept and be okay with not knowing every detail, every backstory, every who, what, where, when, and why. Sometimes it doesn't matter and isn't the point, and stories are far stronger without knowing these details. Now, a follow-up tweet I made was this one. I said, in regards to my previous tweet, I said it's important to remember that I'm speaking generally. There are always exceptions to what appears to be the rule, and good horror prequel films and TV shows can and do exist. However, I rarely find horror prequels, this is me talking now, I rarely find horror prequels a necessary addition that enriches my viewing experience of the film or story they're predating. They often open up details and answer questions that either nobody was asking or filling in gaps that don't need to be filled. They exist merely to capitalize on the popularity of the IP. But hey, that's show business and I can be very picky. So what I'm saying here is essentially that, when you go back, if you're not going to go back and really connect it to the original film, then what's the point of going back? Like, if The First Omen is loosely connected, but it's really its own original thing, well, then why is it a prequel? Right? Like, that's my point, is that it feels like you want to have your cake and eat it too. Write good stories, deliver good films, and let them stand on their own. Like what they did with Rosemary's Baby, like what they did with The Shot, like what they did with Halloween, like what they did, you know what I'm saying? Pick any, just do that. Now, again, it's a double-edged sword because obviously, the producer hat goes on, and I do understand the show business side of show business, and I do understand why this is happening. So it's a bit rhetorical, but I just find it frustrating because, I don't know. I just would love to see. Like, do we think The First Omen will become a classic in its own right? It won't. It will forever be it was pretty good. But if you could deliver something that's not connected and is able to stand on its own by its own merits, and people can draw similarities and parallels all they want. But if you don't have name recognition and you can deliver on your own merits, I think it's just better. It's better for the film. It's better for your product. It's better for the horror genre as a whole, in my opinion. That doesn't mean, again, that you can't deliver a prequel film or a prequel TV show that isn't great, right? There's nuance here to what I'm saying. I'm speaking generally, but I just find it frustrating because of how many misfalls there are, because there isn't a pattern to fall back on to get me excited. But Dave, the first Omen was great. So for every first Omen, there's 9,721, I don't know, Phantom Menaces. I know that's not horror, but you know what I'm saying, right? And so, yes, every now and then you get a prequel that's pretty good, right? But it's not the rule, it's the exception. And so when an announcement comes along that they're making a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, I don't immediately think, oh, the first Omen. No, I go, oh God, here we go. Because the probability is against them. Now, again, you have a talented director, you got the right people involved, and apparently it's a pretty, who knows? Maybe this will be really good. And I am rooting for it to be good. I want it to be good. I really do. I'm not one of these, channels that spend all their time hating. I mean, if you follow me for any length of time, you know that. I'm not here to hate and to I want it to fail. I want it to fail because I don't want it. No, I want it to be great. I want them to prove me wrong. And I want to watch that and go, wow, this is the prequel I didn't even know I needed. This is the story I had no idea I wanted. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want them to do. I'm just not convinced. That log line, again, it's just a log line. It's not a synopsis, right? We haven't read the script, right? We don't have any juicy details yet. This is just an announcement from Variety. They're presumably about to shoot it, okay? And it's a psychological thriller, whatever the case is. The director's last movie, which was kind of in that realm, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, played very well, okay, all right. I'm cautiously optimistic here, but I have to be honest and say that I'm not excited. I'm not like, yeah, cool. And then of course, when I make that known, of course you get people going, well, you just don't have to watch it. You could just not watch it. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I could just not watch it, but you're not whenever anybody delivers a surface level response to something I posted as like that, it tells me that they have the IQ of a donut. And I say that because you're not, you don't have to agree with me, but you're not no shit. Of course I don't have to watch it. That's not it's not the the shot back at me that you think it is. You know what I'm saying? Because it's borderline straw man. I mean, it doesn't say, yeah, yes. And what's your point? Right? I mean, talk about the information that I'm presenting, right? I mean, this is one of the most frustrating things I have sometimes with some people who respond back to me is that they don't, they don't know how to respond and disagree, in a sort of cool way, to just get, hey man, I see what you're saying, but did you ever think of this? And there were some tweets that were like, oh Dave, I know what you're saying. What about this? What about that? Which is really cool. But then you get some, they're like, we just have to watch it. Anytime I get something, it's got to be, I cannot imagine somebody my age and older. Although then again, there are a lot of, but it's got to be these fucking kids. I don't know. So that's how I feel about this. And I know it may not be what you want to hear, but I have to be honest because, preserving the integrity of the mystique of, and I don't feel, to be fair, I don't feel this way about all films. It's not like, there are some movies that I hold in much higher regard than others, right? I'm not as emotionally, sort of jilted, I guess, over the Crystal Lake TV series, which is kind of going back and opening things up because it's Friday the 13th. right? And Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees is not built, his character is not built around the foundation of ambiguity and any sort of mystique and things like that. We know who Jason Voorhees is. We know what he looks like. We know why he returned. We know he was drowned. Like, we know so much. Freddy, the same thing. It doesn't mean that there isn't a certain level of mystique that you strip away, but obviously it's very specific to the properties and to the films that I'm speaking about. And, some I hold and will be a little more protective over others. And Rosemary's Baby is one of those films. It's an absolute classic, and I am one of those people that think there are certain movies out there that do not need sequels, that don't need remakes, that don't need prequels. Why don't you remake bad movies? Right? Why don't you do prequel or, I guess you wouldn't do a sequel or a prequel to a bad movie, but remake bad movies. Why don't you do that? Why are you remaking good movies? Well, again, we know why. That's rhetorical. Because bad movies don't have the name recognition. They have bad name recognition. But I just, so when you look at the Wikipedia page for Rosemary's Baby, okay, this is Wikipedia, they give the plot. Okay, so let me just read this section of the plot of Rosemary's Baby, and then I have a point that I'm going to make, okay? This is Rosemary's Baby. In 1965, stage actor Guy Woodhouse and his wife Rosemary tour the Bramford, a large Renaissance revival apartment building in New York City. They notice the previous tenant, an elderly woman who recently died, displayed odd behaviors. For example, she moved heavy furniture in front of a linen closet she had still been using. Despite warnings from their landlord, Hutch about the Bramford's dark past, Rosemary and Guy move in. Now, let me just say, okay, I'm just going to read that again, okay? In 1965, stage actor Guy Woodhouse and his wife Rosemary tour the Bramford, a large Renaissance revival apartment building in New York City. They noticed the previous tenant, an elderly woman who recently died, displayed odd behaviors. For example, she moved heavy furniture in front of a linen closet she'd still been using. Despite warnings from their landlord, Hutch, about the Bramford's dark past, Rosemary and Guy move in. Now, there is no evidence to suggest that the prequel is going to be about this elderly woman, because clearly what it says in the log line is that it's a younger woman, right? It's a dancer. But my point is, reading that, okay, I don't need to know what went on in the Bramford. I don't need any prequel to open that up and tell other stories from the past, because to me, that demystifies the allure and the mystique of that paragraph. When I read that paragraph and I hear things, it's like when someone's telling you a campfire story, right? It's like when someone's telling you a story, or like when you're reading a book, you're imagining it in your own mind, right? And so when I read that paragraph, and I remember the movie very well, and that is what happens, but they don't go into the backstory. They don't dive who this, woman was, and they open all that up, and then they show flashbacks of the woman. They don't do that because they don't need to do that. Because doing that only ruins the mystique and the eeriness of the building. Doing that opens things up. And the problem is, when you show, and making movies is a show medium, when you go back and that doesn't mean that these prequels can't be great. It doesn't mean that this prequel isn't going to be good. Again, I'm speaking generally and how it usually goes, okay? And why people like me, and there are others out there, kind of go, you know what I'm saying? Is when you open things up, usually half your audience will be like, yeah, and the other half will be like, because it's not what they imagined. And going backwards and opening things up and demystifying, sort of what doesn't need any demystifying, you run the risk of ruining the eeriness of the allure of the building, of the story, right? Of the legend. And sometimes things are just best left to the imagination, because there isn't anything on the face of this planet that I or anybody else could show you that could be far scarier than what you can imagine. I'm not saying that they can't show you scary things or creepy, fucked up, images and imagery. I'm not saying, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's that theater of the mind. It's that, imagining it in your own mind is always usually far scarier than what eventually ends up on screen. And so when you read that paragraph, and I think, wow, there was a woman, and an older woman, and she, exhibited strange behavior, and, the building has a dark past, and there's eerie rumors, and, and she would place that in front of the linen closet. And obviously by the end of Rosemary's Baby, we know why the older woman had placed that in front of the linen closet, which is another reason why we don't need to go back. But I'm just saying that it's so important to me, getting caught up in the mystique and the mystery and the unknown of a story is so important to the story's allure. Like, it just is. It's just the attractive nature of the mood and the mystique that you're building with a story. And so again, there's no evidence that this is the story that they're going to go back and tell. As a matter of fact, I think it's a completely made up thing. And it happens in 1965, and it's a younger couple, or, a woman. But the question is, why? Why are we doing this? Like, so we're just going to go back and tell another story that happened in the building? I don't understand. Is it a different building? Maybe it's a different building, and it's a different older couple. And if it's a different building with a different older couple, well, then yeah, it's a semi remake. Like, I just don't, again, that's rhetorical, but I just feel strongly about this. It's not that I'm not trying to be a party pooper, guys. I'm really not. And it's not that I can't have fun with sequels and prequels. I can. And there are some prequels out there that are very good, that are good stories told really well. But generally overall, I always roll my eyes at this, because generally what usually happens is they deliver something that doesn't land. It just doesn't land. It's not that it's the worst movie of all time, or that it's a piece of crap. That's going to the extreme. But it just doesn't land for whatever reason. And as soon as it comes, it goes, and people forget about it. And then the other side of the coin of that is yeah, but what if it's great? Well, if it's great and they deliver something spectacular, then what usually happens is that the studio thinks, oh my God, and they rush a sequel to the prequel into production, and then it doesn't end up being great, right? Look at the Annabelle films, right? You know what I'm saying? And so that usually ends up happening, is that now you'll have a sequel to the prequel, but the sequel to the prequel that was really good, the sequel is not very good. And then it dies. And it's just like, it's just like, why can't we just leave it? And that's why I am a huge proponent on, if you want to do a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, or to Halloween, to The Shining had a sequel, but to whatever the case is, if you have this fantastic idea that is semi-connected, and what I mean by that is you have a great story that can stand on its own, right? There are parallels, there are similarities, because you're dealing in the same subgenre, okay? Rosemary's Baby is not the only, Antichrist, pregnant. There's lots of these types of movies, right? So there's lots of movies that deal in the same subgenre. If you have a great idea, one that may even be a little unique, like, there's not too much of this out there. We're dealing in the same subgenre. This is kind of cool. This is, I think maybe, we should, then allow it to stand on its own. And because if, and I'm not saying that they're going to do this, I'm just saying, if your story is loosely connected to the movie that is the classic, why are we connecting it at all? right? Because then it's a double-edged sword, because some might say, well, we have to loosely connect it, kind of connect it to get the nostalgia train going, but we don't want to connect it too much, because then we run the risk of, being connected too much and then we fail. And it's like, well, yeah, but then let's not do it. Let's just make a great story that lives in the same subgenre and just let it stand on its own. And that's how I feel about that kind of stuff. And then we have something new. You can look at Immaculate. Oh, it's new, Immaculate. How many times have we seen a movie like Immaculate, right? But Immaculate is pretty good. And it's like, hey, we have another good one in the genre. It's not connected. And then some people might say, well, what's the wrong if it is connected? It's like, because I am sick and tired of the same fucking shit over and over again. And I know I might be out on an island with that. And that's not to say that they're going to deliver the same thing. But when I read that log line, it feels like a semi kind of reimagining reboot. It's a girl with an older couple, and you know what I mean? And I'm just like, well, let's, I don't know. And I know I've been kind of hot today. I've been hot. I've been on. I've been a little prickly today. But again, hey, you know what? I'm the first to admit, at the end of the day, you deliver a great movie, prequel or not, if it's a great story and it really is scary. But I got to be honest, I'm a tough crowd to please. I really, really am. I'm tough. And I know to some of my viewers out there, they may be annoyed by that. And it's not that I'm trying to annoy you. I am very picky. And I think it's primarily because I personally, and I'm not saying I'm a better fan than you. I'm not a better fan than you. You're not a better fan than me. Different fans like different things, different strokes for different folks, right? I genuinely believe that. But I tend to like a little more of the psychological horror and a little more of the highbrow horror, simply because of where I am in my life. Because it's not like I can have fun with the slashers and the zombies and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. But there's only so much I can watch of that same kind of movie in the same kind of series, unless I'm revisiting classics from my childhood. Elm Street, Friday, Halloween. Sure, I could watch all those movies, every one of those movies, fine. But when it comes to new stuff, I really like when, if somebody has a great psychological demon possession, Rosemary baby kind of movie that is unique, that's never been done before, or maybe, from a different perspective, dude, deliver that shit. Fucking greenlight that shit. Deliver that shit. Let's get that thing on the fucking screen. Let's get that thing to celluloid. Although, of course, it'd be shot digitally now, but let's fucking do it. Yes, I'm all for it. I'm rooting for it. But why connect it to Rosemary's Baby? That's just how I feel, and I don't know. It's just one of those things where, man, well, I guess we'll see. I mean, they don't care what I think, right? They don't know who I am. They don't care what I think. So, they couldn't care less. So, they're going to do what they're going to do. And you know what? If it's great, it's great. And I do know there are people out there that say, well, why do you care? If they make it and it's shit, well, then you still got the original. And well, no, and there is a level of truth to that. But it's basically on principle is what I'm talking about. It doesn't affect me in my day-to-day life. And if they make it, you don't like it, they have yes, 100%. I totally am on board with that. It's just really the principle and the idea of, I hope this isn't a situation. If you're going to make a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, then go all in. Go all in. Put all your chips on the table, all your cards on the table. Go all in. Make it a prequel. Connect the fucking shit out of it. Because if it's just a semi-connect, like I watched the movie, and if I didn't know it was a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, I wouldn't know it was a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. Then why bother? You know what I mean? Why bother? This is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby because it takes place in the same apartment. You know what I mean? Like, okay, anyway, I know it's a hot topic. I do know. And if there's one thing that I've learned about being on YouTube for a while is that, there's many different fans, and I do know that I can rub a lot of fans the wrong way. They can, not like what I have to say or my hot takes, but, I hope I never come across as I'm somehow a better fan than you, because that's certainly not what I'm trying to say. I'm simply saying that I love the idea of a terrific psychological thriller I just, I do. I just am like, a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. Why? Like, if it's a great story, well, then let it stand on its own. I just don't understand why we're doing a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. It just feels so out of left field. It feels, it's kind of how I felt about Dr. Sleep. Now, to be fair, Dr. Sleep was based on Stephen King's Dr. Sleep book. So, I mean, it did come from the man himself. So, I was kind of like, well, okay, right? But Rosemary's Baby, I mean, I don't think anybody was asking for this. But you know what? I wish them the best of luck, and I sincerely mean that. I want to be proven wrong. I want to watch that movie and be like, oh, this is fucking great. This is the prequel I didn't know I needed. It was the prequel I didn't know I wanted. And I sincerely mean that. I do. I just am skeptical when I hear, and again, like I said earlier, there are some films and franchises I would not have this strong of a reaction over, but there's some films and franchises that I do. And it's because I hold them, in a bit higher regard. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if they wanted to do a prequel to Friday the 13th, well, I don't hold Friday the 13th in as high regard as I do something like Rosemary's Baby in terms of, the style of film. Right. So, I get it. I totally get it. That it is very dependent on, it's very personal to me, of course. But I do. I wish them the best of luck. It sounds like they've got a great director on board. It sounds like they got a great idea. I just hope that it's really good, man. I'm rooting for them. I really am. I really, really am. Anyways, folks, let's jump over to the chat room and see what you are all saying. I know some super chats did come in. There's a non-super chat one here from Thunderwolf 4 says, wasn't there a girl that threw herself out of the building in the opening? I thought that was the character they were going to use. Possibly. You might be right on that. You might be right. But let me use that as an example. I haven't watched Rosemary's Baby in a little bit, so I'd have to double check on that. And then there's one extra thing I want to say too before we head over to the chat room. But let me use that as an example, Thunderwolf. Let's say you're right. I don't need to know that girl's story because it demystifies what I just need to know it happened. Wow, because I am somebody that likes to revel and live in the ambiguity of the wow. Ooh, it's like, what was she going through? What's her story? What happened to her? How bad was it that was the best option? Ooh, it's creepy. You tell a whole story about that, it demystifies it. It demystifies it. And then is the prequel to Rosemary's Baby going to end in 1968 and they're going to get, a Mia Farrow lookalike and you're going to see them moving into the building? Like, I don't want that. Yeah, but dude, it's great. It's like, yeah, I know. Okay, great. Hey, different strokes for different folks, right? I get it. But it's usually these things don't enrich my experience of watching the movie that they're doing a prequel to. Like I've never watched, I'm just trying to think of some examples now, but it's like, I checked out the Exorcist TV series, right? It didn't enrich. Now I know it's based, that's not that's not a good example. I'm trying to think of some examples, but it's rare. I'll just say it's rare that I'll see a prequel to something that makes me fall in love with the original all over again. Like it just doesn't, because it's usually unnecessary. It's usually just, and some are good. Like that's good, but it doesn't do much. Like it's okay. Now we have this, you know what I'm saying? And so, I guess I'm old school. And I just love, there are certain stories, certain movies, that are just best left as is. Now that doesn't mean you can't remake it. Right? I actually, to be honest with you, I would I don't think you need to remake Rosemary's Baby either, but maybe I should do a show on remakes, sequels, reboots, requels, prequels, and just kind of give my different thoughts on all of it. Because there are similarities across the board, but of course there are also differences across the board as well. But yeah, no, well, okay. So the last thing I'll say here before we jump over to the chat room is, I made a tweet as well. The thumbnail, okay, to this show today, I'll briefly show the thumbnail. So that image of Mia Farrow, right, going, like that. If you've seen the movie, then you know that moment, right? One of the best things about that moment, and I understand it's 1968, and I understand that we don't live in that era anymore. I understand all of this. But one of the best moments, okay, one of the best moments from that ending is she walks over to, the baby, right? They're like, come over, look at your baby, right? She walks over, she peels back the curtain a little bit. She looks in and she goes, and you know what? They don't cut to show the baby's face. They stay on Mia Farrow. They stay with her. And she looks around and she goes, what have you done? What have you done to its eyes? What have you done? And they don't, as soon as she says, what have you done to its eyes? They don't then cut to the baby to show what they've done to its eyes. Nope. They allow the audience to revel in their imagination. They just allow the audience to sit there and just think about it, right? What is she looking at? What's she looking at? I want to see. What's she looking at? And everybody in the audience is all going to that place, right? We're all going to the place of that imagination. You might be going to a different place than I am, but we're all going to our worst fears, right? We're all going there. If they suddenly cut and showed the baby full on, there's the baby, whatever, right? And you got then some of the audience would be like, oh, and then some of the audience would be like, oh, fuck, that's lame. You know what I'm saying, right? Because now you're showing, you run that risk. Now, of course, there are movies where you do need to show things. And if it was a movie that came out in 2024, they would have showed that baby. But they don't show them, right? There's a moment towards the end of that scene where there's a bit of an overlay of like some evil eyes or whatever. But it's very faint, very faint. You can't really tell what it is. It just kind of looks like a demon face. They don't show the baby. I love that. I love it. Now, again, stylistically, it's more old school filmmaking. It's very much that theater of the mind, 1960. Like it's not quite the style of filmmaking you would get to see here today. And if that movie were to come out today, studio executives would be like, you need to show the baby's face. Oh, but I don't want to show the baby's face. You need to show the baby's face. Yeah, but the whole point is not showing the baby's face and allowing the audience to imagine what we are living vicariously. Well, we see, oh my God, it's her face and holy shit and all this kind. No, you need to show the baby's face. Why? Because that's what audiences want today. They want to see the baby's face. Let's show the baby's face. Make it all like, that's what it would be today. But not in Rosemary's Baby. Not in Rosemary's Baby. And I'm not suggesting that they would do that in the prequel that they're making. I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying that it was so great, right? We didn't see it. All we saw was, and immediately when you see someone go, instinctually you want to see. Fucking let me look. I want to see. Show me. I want to see. Oh my God, the horror. I want to see. I want to see. I want to see. Nope, Polanski doesn't show you. He does not show you. Because that's the point. He wants you to imagine it. He wants you to go to that place. That place. That place. Because there's nothing that he could show you that would be scarier than where you're going. And every time you watch that scene, that's where you go. So in your mind, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. In your mind, that's what it looks like. And in that person's mind over there, it might look something completely different, but it's just as scary. And now every time the world watches that scene, they all go to that moment in their own minds. And they're not told what it looks like. They're told to imagine what it looks like. And I get that that is a lost stylistic, not stylistic, but well, yeah, it's a lost style of it's old school, and I am sort of very old school in my in my love of film. Although there are modern things I love too, but especially when it comes to horror, especially old school horror. Oh, and now again, it's 1968. The movie's dated. There isn't, very few younger people today are going to watch that movie and be like, oh, no, they'd think it's just lame. But that's awesome shit, man. That's awesome shit. And the way her eyes widen and she's just like, what have you done? What did you all do? Calm down, Rosemary. He has your father, or he has its father's eyes. But that's not Guy's eyes. Satan is his father now. I mean, it's so good, and we don't see him. Satan is his father. That's what, the old guy says, right? Satan is his father. It's like, holy fuck. Show me, damn it, I want to see. No. Imagine it. Right? That's great stuff. I love that kind of stuff. Again, not a lot you would see today like that, and I understand why. And that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been some horrific thing that they could show you that wouldn't have hit, right? I mean, look at the original Exorcist, 1973, right? You get all the demon in there and all that kind of stuff. Whoa, definitely creepy, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. Again, please understand that when I speak passionately about these things, it's not black and white. Like I'm never speaking in absolutes. Okay. I'm never speaking in absolutes. I'm always speaking in, generally speaking, like how it usually goes. Right. And so, that's where I kind of like, because to me, I'm 45 years old. Well, not yet. I'll be 45 next month, but basically 45. And so, I didn't grow up in the digital age. I mean, I did through my 20s a little bit, but certainly, I'm I'm not old, but I do remember sort of that last kind of era right before everything went digital, internet, social media, phones, all that kind of stuff. And so, for me, I when we were kids, I mean, nuance existed, right? You know what I mean? And now because of social media and all the arguing and the culture wars and everything, like everything's so black and white now. And, you say something online and somebody takes it and runs with it and goes, so what you're saying is, and it's like, no, I'm not saying that at all. Like, how do you get that from this? Do you know what I mean? But that's where we live now, right? In this world. So that is why you will hear me preface a lot of things. It's only because I want to be very clear. And if I'm very clear, there's always evidence that if somebody tries to call me out on something or use something against me, I can say, well, did you watch the rest? Well, what about this? Well, look at this timestamp. Well, did you actually watch it? Did you actually listen to what I said? Right? And so it's really protecting myself. Because, there's a lot of people out there that would like to use your words against you in any sort of way. And, I like to, at least the best I can, be as clear as possible. Because, it could be very easy for somebody, because I'm passionate, it could be very easy for somebody to say, well, you just don't like horror movies. It's like, what? No, I love horror movies. It's my favorite genre. I love all different kinds of horror movies. I love bad horror movies too. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, right? And then some people might say, well, you just fucking hate Paramount Plus, or something like that, right? Or you just hate this director. I was like, what? No, I'm rooting for her. I want this movie to be good, right? So, oh God. And if you don't believe me, talk to Mike from We Watched a Movie, who just had this little thing happen to him on Twitter. And it's like, oh God, and start a YouTube channel, gain a big following. And then you too will be like, holy shit. Am I like, does people, you know what I'm saying? And again, not everybody, but you know who you are. You know who you are, and it's like, God, so that's why I always do my best to be very careful. Because, then I'm protected. If anybody at any point in time, was trying to cancel me or, use something against me, I can say, well, yeah, but you didn't watch the rest of the video, did you? Or you didn't watch this part, did you? And it's, to me, that's very important. If you're going to put yourself out there, you have to be honest with how you feel. You have to be, honest with your viewers, and you have to be proud of your, what you like and what you don't like, but also choosing your words wisely simply because of the nature of the platform. and it can be very easy to take people's words and meanings out of context. You know what I mean? And, well, here's a prime example. It's not horror related, but there was a Facebook post I saw. Maybe you've seen this before. And it was an image of Harrison Ford, David Prowse, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Kenny Baker, and what's his face? The guy who played Chewbacca. Why am I blanking on his name? Anyway, so it was like the five of them, right? Chewbacca, Darth Vader, Leia, yeah. Anyways, so the only two that are remaining alive now are Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. So it was this cute little image of the five of them, or the six of them, whatever. And how many? So Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Kenny Baker, David Prowse. So six of them. And there was and of course they had everybody with like the blue Force Ghost glow over them, except for Peter Mayhew. That's it. Thank you, Dream Villain. Peter Mayhew. Rest in peace, Peter Mayhew. Peter Mayhew. Love Peter Mayhew. So it was an image of the six of them all together at some event for the original Star Wars. And of course, all of them are dead now, except for Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. And the post said, I'm paraphrasing, but it said, some of the cast, yep, that's some of the cast from Star Wars, there are only two of them left now. The comments are, Anthony Daniels is alive. Warwick Davis is alive. Billy D. Williams is alive. Oh, this is dumb. Some of the cast of Star Wars, in which only two of them in this photo are alive. It is remarkable to me how so many people didn't get that that's what the poster was. He didn't mean that there's no Star Wars actors alive except for Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. He's talking specifically about this image. The only two alive from Star Wars in this image are Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. It's like, I don't get it. This is not rocket science. It's not rocket science. I know. I'm prickly today, folks. I'm prickly today. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's Friday. I don't know why I'm prickly. I really don't. I haven't had a bad day or anything. I don't know why. But I see things like that, and I'm just like, I think what it is, folks, and I sincerely mean this, and then I'll jump over to the super chats and your questions. I really believe it's just people just like to be outraged. They are angry, even if they don't realize this, in their own lives. And I am purely speculating here, okay? I'm purely speculating. But I think there are so many people out there that are just miserable people, even if they don't realize it consciously. They think they're happy, but they're not. They're miserable with their lives, or whatever the case is. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes, hey, you know what? There's varying degrees of, hey, I'm not knocking it, right? There are some people that have really tough lives out there, okay? But I simply mean that I just think that they're just looking for something to bitch and moan about. And when they see something that is, like that, they don't read properly, as somebody said there, and they just, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, like, if you just took a moment, clearly he means in the photo, right? Not all together, and so you take that as an example and you apply that across social media. It's everywhere. There's so many things that have been taken out of context. Mike from We Watched a Movie, he made a post, a tweet, I think it was like a few days ago or something, where he said, could you imagine, like, at the beginning of Scream 7, if like, and he's farting around. He's just having a fun time. He's just farting around. He's just like, could you imagine if at the beginning of Scream 7, Sydney is watching like the news and a news report comes on and there's been 2 murders in New York and it's Tara and Sam and they've been murdered. Oh my God. Could you imagine that? Whoa. Like, what could that mean? All that kind of stuff. And, like back in well, Mike's not that much younger than me. I think Mike's got to be, is he 40, 39, 40? So he's only a few years younger than me. But back in like the 80s and the 90s, you know, if we had said that to each other, it would have been like, oh yeah, dude, could you imagine? That'd be fucking wild. Wow, you know, whoa, that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. It'd be crazy. And then we'd go on with our day. You know what I mean? You know, but some guy on Twitter got his knickers in a twist and, you know, took it so personally and was getting so stressed out over, oh, shut up, Mike. You know, you're dumb. You fucking know what it means. And it's just like, what? He's just farting around. He's just having fun. Like, can't we just have fun? Why are you taking this so fucking seriously? You know, are you scared that maybe that might happen and you don't want it to happen? Mike was just having fun, you know? And so, and Mike is like, you know, quadruple the size of this channel. So I can only imagine, you know, the messages he gets. Oh my God. Mike and Jay, of course. Mike obviously be more prominent. But I see things like that and I'm just like, oh, fuck, man. So I responded to the tweet, you know, kind of in support of Mike because, you know, he's a good dude. And you know, it's one of those things where I don't understand. Like I do, but I can't, I want to believe that it's the younger crowd. And I say that with all due respect to the younger crowd, right? You know, 30 and under. I don't mean to sound pretentious or condescending at all because there's a lot of you that are amazing and you're not like this at all. But there are a lot of people that have grown up in the digital age. And I just think they're just, man, they need to get out. They need to get out, go smell the grass, go for a run, play some football or something, or just like live real life, you know, and get off the internet and stop watching me. Because it's just like, man, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I know there's some viewers are thinking, oh, Dave, you're No, I'm not. Start a YouTube channel, get a following, you know, and welcome to the club. You know, it's crazy. Now, it doesn't happen every day all the time, but the thing that perplexes me the most, the thing that frustrates me the most is when you'll say something and something will go, oh, so, no. And you're like, what? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. How do you know? And that tells me that I think this person is just looking to be enraged. You know, it's manufactured outrage. I mean, that's where we are right now is manufactured outrage, right? Everybody's angry. You know, fucking angry, fucking Joe Biden, goddamn Trump, fuck Trudeau, you goddamn son of a bitch, damn fucking Maple Leafs lost again. Fuck you, goddamn piece of shit. Fire that coach, you motherfucker. I mean, that's just where we are with everything. Goddamn movies, here it comes again. Now, one could say, well, aren't you angry about this prequel? You're damn right I'm angry about this prequel. Fucking goddamn prequel to Rosemary's Baby. We're all hot. We're hot. The question though is that if you can be angry over something and I'm not even angry over this. I'm not angry over it. It was a topic that I saw come up and I felt that I wanted to get my 2 cents out there and sort of just, you know, kind of say, hey, this is how I feel about it. But I think, you know, as long as you can articulate your thoughts in a well-constructed manner, and I try to do that as best I can here. And as long as you have something of value to say and you're really passionate about it, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, and you can, you know, articulate like your position, I am always willing and open to change my mind and look at that and go, that actually was a really good point. You know, like it's true. I mean, I don't want people to think that I'm so set in my ways with how I feel about certain things that I can't have my mind changed or that I can't look at something and go, well, I disagree with you, but that's a good point. I mean, that is a good point. Like I totally see where you're coming from. You know what I'm saying? So as long as people are able to do that, I think that's great. It's just the people that that have these like mental gymnastics and it's just like, you know, you say one thing, and it's like, so what you're saying is that the fucking thing, and you just hate Melissa Barrera. That's what you're saying. You just hate Melissa Barrera. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I get it now. I get it. You just want to see her die. You just hate Melissa Barrera. I was like, what the hell is this guy on? What? No, I just thought, what? It's crazy. It's crazy. It's cray-cray, as they say. Cray-cray. And my last name's McRae. I don't know. That's how it is. Anyways, okay, let's jump over to the chat room and see what you are all saying here on this Friday night. There are some super chats that came in, so let me get them. A very generous super chat from Jay Edwards of 20 Macaroos. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. Says the Dave McRae Appreciation Fund. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And I see that you've just become a new member. Welcome aboard, Jay. Amazing. Really appreciate your support, man. Josh McKenna sends in $9.99. Thank you, Josh, and says, since Harrison Ford is your favorite actor, oh, he is. Have you seen every single one of his movies? Are there any you haven't seen? Great question, Josh. So I have not seen every one of his movies, but I have seen like 95% of his movies. I've yet to see Force 10. No, I did see Force 10 from Navarone. I've yet to see The Frisco Kid. I've yet to see Hanover Street. These are movies in the 70s. And then there's a couple later ones that he did. Yeah, there's a few, but I've seen like 95% of them for sure. Yeah, I've seen like 95% of them. Yeah, he's my favorite actor. Yep. He's 82 this year. Oh, man, when he goes, that's going to be a tough stream. I'm going to have to do a stream, you know. I might have to wear all black. Well, I usually wear black anyway. I'm not wearing black today, though. I've got one of my favorite hoodies on, Hostess, the Munchies. But anyway, but thank you, Josh, for the super chat. I appreciate that. Butter Cookie sends in $5. Says, I'm wondering if the new film will focus on Terry, Rosemary's friend, who had gotten on drugs and fell to her death. So that's okay. That's who we're talking about. That's who the person in the chat room was talking about. I don't know. I don't know if this is something completely new, or if it is going to connect in that manner. Again, I don't know. I guess, and I understand why people love prequels and sequels, of course, but prequels, I mean, you know, there's an opportunity to world build and open up the world, and there's nostalgia, of course, but, and to flesh out things and to develop things further and all that kind of stuff. And it's not that, I guess maybe I should have said this at the top of the show, but there are, and I admit this, there are properties and films out there where prequels, do actually help and expand. But I think there are some movies, especially in the horror genre, movies that have such a mystique and ambiguity to them that I think expanding and world building on those stories, I don't think is in the original film's best interest. But I'm ready to be proven wrong. If Apartment 7A is mind-blowingly phenomenal, then, hey, man, I'm ready. I'm ready to be like, yeah, fuck, yeah. It makes me appreciate, but it rarely happens, So it's a tricky thing. I don't know. But to your point, if it's not going to be that, and let's say it's not, and it's a made-up story, which is fine, okay, but then why are we connecting it? I just don't understand why we're connecting it to Rosemary's Baby. Why not just do what Immaculate did? You have the first Omen, you have Immaculate, right? Similar premises, right? You know what I mean? It lives in the same subgenre, right? One is connected to the Omen and one isn't. But neither of them are bad, right? So, and of course that's opinion, but I'm just saying that it's I don't know. But again, like I said, I feel this way about certain properties over others just because of my attachment. Let me see. Oh, hang on a sec here. Where are we here? Butter Cookie follows up with $5, says, I absolutely agree about leaving great originals alone. More often than not, telling too much ruins the mystique. I agree. And here's the thing too, with remakes, if you were to remake Rosemary's Baby, you don't ruin the mystique necessarily. Now, this could be a matter of opinion. It depends on where you are emotionally and your emotional connection to the films. But a remake is a remake. So by definition, you are not telling your audience that this lives and breathes in the same universe as the original. It's not a legacy sequel. It's not a legacy prequel. It is a remake, like full-on remake. They're telling the same story again. Maybe they're reimagining it a bit, right? But it's a remake, right? It's called Rosemary's Baby. It's a remake. And although that would get a lot of flack and blasphemy and holy shit, for sure, because anytime you mention a remake to a classic movie, people lose their minds. However, in my opinion, and maybe I need, at least right now off the top of my head, if I sat a bit longer and thought about this, maybe I'd feel a bit differently. But I feel as though that is almost, ironically in some ways, easier to digest because you're not being told that it is connected in any way, shape, or form to your beloved classic. It is therefore, by definition, a remake. And it hopefully can stand on its own. And if it's great, that's amazing. If it's not, no big deal, I have the original. And then one could say, well, what is it a big deal if the prequel is no good, you still have the original? Yes, but the problem with that is that the prequel still lives in the same universe as that original. And therefore, there are questions to answers, right? Or wait, answers to questions that have now been revealed to me through a potential prequel that I now think about whenever I watch the original, right? And what if I don't like those answers? What if I don't like the direction or the things they've opened up and demystified for me in that prequel? Well, now when I watch the original, it's going to be harder for me to not think about those things in the prequel because they are connected in the same universe. Whereas a complete remake, if they fuck that up, it's not a big deal because that's its own thing. That's over here. That's not even connected to the original, right? So it's now when I watch the original, I don't think about the remake and how maybe awful that might be. I just think about the original because it's its own thing. Now, I do understand that is person specific. And that is, there are some people that may be able to do that like me and some people who may not be able to do that. But I think that's how I would argue that a bit in terms of when we talk about sequels and remakes and things like that. But it's interesting. Andrew Stevens, one of our great mods. Andrew Stevens sends in $10. Thank you, Andrew, and says, besides Star Wars financial success prequel, has there ever been a successful prequel film? Well, I'd have to take a look at how The First Omen is doing. I'm not sure. Success is measured in many different facets, right? I mean, you could maybe not do so well at the box office, but you make that up on, PVOD, Blu-ray sales, all that kind of stuff, streaming, so there's many different ways to be a success. Box office success, I'm not sure. I'd have to take a dive and take a look. It's a good question. Reese Wilson, my man, my brother from down under. Great to see you here, Reese. Haven't seen you in a while. Great to see you here. Reese Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, sends in $14.99 Australian shekels and says, it's like when they were developing a prequel to Die Hard. Why the hell? The original film's events were clearly the first time McClane had been in a situation like that. Glad that didn't happen. I could not agree more. Reese, yes, I remember when they were going to do that. And I don't know if I did any videos on it specifically. I'm not entirely sure. But I think I remember when they were going to do that. And I remember saying, but that makes no sense. And it makes no sense because Die Hard was clearly delivered as a movie about a ordinary cop who finds himself in a extraordinary situation. A situation that he is A, not prepared for, B, has never been in his life. That doesn't mean he hasn't chased down a couple of bad guys, from time to time while being in New York, because he flew from New York to LA. He was a New York cop in Die Hard 1. He was an LA cop in Die Hard 2. Anyway, but that doesn't mean he hasn't chased down a couple of bad guys and been maybe on, a couple of stings or something. But in terms of where Die Hard went, no, it was about an ordinary guy. That's ultimately why they went with Bruce Willis too, right? Because he was kind of that, he was in Moonlighting, but kind of that no name. He was kind of a name, but not like Schwarzenegger or Stallone at that time. And so he was like this everyday ordinary guy. He wasn't jacked to the tits, right? And And that was part of the appeal, and that's why they did that. And he found himself in this extraordinary situation that nobody's ever been in. Well, doing a prequel, and I remember talking about, we'll follow a young John McClane, and he'll be getting into all sorts of what? No. John McClane, you can't do that. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. If you have a great idea, then tell a great cop movie and don't connect it to Die Hard. Just tell a great story then. And any parallels will just, they're okay. But yeah, I remember that, Reese. You're right. And thank goodness they didn't go through with that. Thank goodness. Of course, there's still time. But I am glad they didn't, because it demystifies and ruins what Die Hard was really all about. Was an ordinary cop, a good cop, a talented cop, right? He was, I'm not saying he was a very competent, smart cop, which relied on his street smarts as a smart cop in an extraordinary situation. But he's never been through that before. Never. And there's even a few lines in that movie that he spews that help to sell that. Anyway. Yeah, no, Reese, I could not agree with you more. 100%. 100%. Great to see you here, Reese. Thanks for coming out. Let me see here. Let me go back and see what some of you are saying here. Heck says, Mike is quite easygoing. Got to be a certain type of person to get their panties in a bunch over his content. Oh, he is. He's great. He's great. I love Mike. He's fantastic. No, Mike said nothing wrong. He just was, he tweeted a tweet that was like, a fun tweet, like you're hanging out with your buddies. Dude, could you imagine fucking at the beginning of the movie? And this album was always doing this. Could you imagine? And then if I was in the room, I'd be like, dude, could you imagine? Nobody's getting there. Why are you getting so serious? As Heath Ledger says, why so serious? Why? It's just a joke, man. It's a joke. Oh, it's true. There are people that just should not have phones in their hands. Put the phone down, you fucking child. Put it down. Get outside. Sniff the grass. Jesus. Stop your tweeting. Stop. Relax. It's okay. Somebody take their phone away. You're grounded. You're grounded, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let me see here. Flick Symmetry, my man. Flick Symmetry says understand basic grammar and sentence structure as it relates to the image. It's not taught in schools anymore. Oh, it's wild. And to your, I absolutely agree with you, but I think what ends up happening is you're right. We are in the era now where people they just read headlines, right? So they don't actually dive into a story to figure out the nuances of what's going on. But at the same time, the media is responsible for this as well, because now and for many years now, really ever since the introduction of 24-hour news channels in the 90s. It was the 90s, I think it really kind of it rose to prominence, and hugely thanks to the O.J. Simpson trial. But because of the 24-hour news cycle of mainstream media, media really, again, there's good areas and not so good areas, but generally speaking, the media is not in the business of covering news. They're in the business of creating news. And so, they will dramatize and create drama, because it sells, right? It sells. And we know this. We know this. And they know we know this. And they know that we know that they know that we know that they know that we know that they know that we know this. And, but they do it. And people are still tricked, and not that this was the same kind of thing, but the point I'm making is that because we are not trained to read carefully anymore, people will all they see is just an image of Star Wars and actors and somebody saying only two alive. And they don't think that, they're clearly referring to the image. He's not talking about of the entire Star Wars franchise. He's talking about in this image of these 6 individuals, there's only 2 left. And again, I'm on here, and I often say, I'd like to think it's not my generation that's doing this, but I do know that, it crosses generations. There are people in their 60s that are just that just can't handle this kind of thing. And so, and it's not that I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made some, mistakes where I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? I look and I'm like, oh, okay. We've all done it, right? But it's this obsessive need to be angry and this manufactured outrage. It's fake. It's fake. 90% of the outrage you see online is fake. It's absolutely fake, right? Like, for example, that tweet that I read you earlier, right? There was nothing wrong with that tweet. I just said, they're making a remake to Rosemary's Baby. You know what? I think it's important to remember this and this and this and this and this. And this why, I think it's important and maybe why it's unnecessary. I said all that, right? There's nothing wrong with that tweet. And then somebody had to chime in and go, well, you just don't have to watch it. It's like, why are you angry? Oh, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Yeah, but so why is that your response to me? Now, that's true. What they said is true, right? But then if that is your response to me, why send the tweet at all? Why not just think, oh, well, he could just not watch it, right? But it's like people are scouring the internet for any opportunities to be passive aggressive or to be kind of like semi-throwing shade, but not really, but kind of, but not really, but no, what? And then when you approach them, like, what are you talking about? I'm just kidding. What? What's going on? That's how they move. And it's like, why? Like, why did you, he is right. Well, then don't watch it. That's true. But it's one of those like cliche, obvious statements that you say. And that's why I'm like, why did you need to, well, that's true, dude. That's true. Good point. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Do you want some, some, like, what I'm saying? But it's like everybody is just so fucking angry, and here I am. I'm we're all It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. All right, we got about 5 minutes left in the show here, folks. Alex Shambach sends in a member chat. Thank you, buddy. Says, do you believe that horror movies still hold a certain reputation that compels certain A-list actors to stay away from the genre? The ascent of elevated horror leads me to believe no. Hope all is well. Great question, Alec. Well, I think horror is a little more respected now today than it was, say, 40 or 50 years ago. And I think, but it is and probably will always be the black sheep of the genre family. That is primarily because horror is cheap to make. And there is a stigma around horror. Not that cheap to make is bad. I just mean that there's a stigma around horror that is very difficult to escape from underneath its shadow. And it's a very difficult stigma to escape from. It's like fan films, right? You know what I mean? You have people like myself and Vincent DeSanti and Cecil Laird delivering, professional studio quality fan films, but there's still that stigma that's out there, right? Because the vast majority of fan films are friends in your backyard with your buddies hanging out, shooting on your dad's camcorder. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all, but that's the vast majority of fan films, right? And so when, actual professional indie fan films come along, it's not like it's going to change people's perceptions overall, right? And it's kind of like that with horror. The vast majority of horror films, because they're cheap to make, and you can make them really cheap, there's a lot of people making them, and there's the spectrum of quality with horror is, in my opinion, the spectrum of quality in horror is so extreme, probably extreme over any other genre. And there's like really bad horror movies, and then there's fantastic. You know what I'm saying? You don't traditionally see that in a lot of other genres. And I think horror has just always had that reputation, of being cheap and scantily clad women. And even though it's not all that, right? It's not. And there are people like your Jordan Peele's and your, what's his name? Ari Aster, I think his name is. And, trying to kind of elevate it a bit and make it a little more mainstream. And maybe we can get some Oscar noms and, things like that. But it will always be very difficult. It is the black sheep. It is the redheaded stepchild. No offense to my redheaded friends out there. I'm just using that as an expression. The expression. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying, it's like black sheep of the family, all these sort of, cliche expressions. It tends to to be that, right? And so it's just one of those things where it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get out from under its shadow, and I don't know if the horror genre, yes, I think A-list stars are attracted to quality scripts, are attracted to quality stories. And, at the end of the day, as much as Terrifier is, exciting for a lot of people, it's a splatter exploitative slasher movie. Its gimmick and its shtick is how gory can we possibly be? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's the hook. That's the shtick. And when it does really well and hugely successful, is that great for horror? It is, but it's not necessarily great for, getting out from under the stigma. And so it's very tricky. It's very, very tricky. But like I said, there are some great horror films that are being delivered now. I thought The Night House was great. The Invisible Man was great. The Ritual was great. Hereditary was great. There are some great horror films, but it's also, here's the thing too, and this is another thing I need to say, that is pretty tricky when it comes to horror, is that it's also one of the only genres that has so many subgenres, right? Do you know what I mean? I mean, yes, you could say, oh, well, this is an action, sci-fi, drama. Okay. But generally speaking, a drama is a drama. An action movie is an action movie. A science fiction movie is a science fiction movie, right? With horror, well, what is it? Is it a slasher movie? Is it a paranormal movie? Is it a possession movie? Is it a supernatural movie? Is it a found footage movie? Is it there's so many different, do you know what I mean? It's got all these branches, and that's partly why I think there's all this quality. There's so much horror out there. And it's tough, man. It's tough. It's tough to get out from under the shadow of what was instilled so many years ago. It's often seen as, hey, listen, I am not a huge fan of Tony Moran and his behavior towards the Halloween franchise and his behavior in general. But something he did say that I absolutely agree with, because he's right. He said, when I was hired to do Halloween, I was embarrassed. I didn't tell anybody, because in those days, doing a low budget indie horror movie was like one step up from doing a porno. He's not wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like horror back in those days, in the 60s, the 70s, you know what I'm saying? Especially low budget indie horror. We're not talking about Alfred Hitchcock. We're talking about fresh out of film school, low budget indie horror. Come on and hang out. We'll give you some, cheeseburgers and Kool-Aid. I mean, you know what I'm saying? What is this? What's going on? And what's happening? And Jamie Lee Curtis was not a name then. Donald Pleasance was a name. Oh, okay. But what is this? He's not wrong. It's always had this stigma, for better or worse. It's always had it for a multitude of reasons. And so I'm rooting for it. I really am, because I think there are terrific horror stories to be told in every genre, and slasher included. But we have to we have to accept that, unfortunately, because of the type of genre it is, it may never be as revered as, but it depends on the subgenre you're talking about, right? Slasher movies? No. Terrifier will never be revered like The Shining. It will be revered in its own way, in its own footprint, sure. But nobody's ever going to, the general consensus is not The Shining and Terrifier. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to happen. Not that that's rocket science to come to a conclusion on. I just mean that, there's a lot of nuance there. And so, but I will say that horror is cyclical, and horror makes money when it's good horror, and when it's released at the right time, it makes good money, and people love it, and they love being scared. Not everybody, but I do, you do, a lot of people do. And I think it's my favorite genre. It always has been. It's the genre I want to work in the most. If I could make horror movies for the rest of my life, I'd be a very happy camper. And I love it. And I love all horror movies too, all genres. But I am very picky. I'm a very, very picky person. I'm a very difficult person to please, just because I've seen a lot of it now, and I've seen the same thing over and over again so much that I kind of, wears a little thin on me, but it's my favorite genre, and I love it, and I'm rooting for it. Every time there's a great horror movie that's coming out, I don't care if it's Barbarian or if it's this prequel, I'm rooting for this. I am. I'm not, overly enthused that they're going to do it, but I certainly don't want it to fail, because that's not good for horror. It's not good for Rosemary's Baby. It is good, as much as I don't think it's necessary to do this prequel, it is good and better if it does succeed and if it is a good movie, right? So if they're going to make it with or without me, right? And obviously they're not going to make it with me, but you know what I'm trying to say. You know the expression. They're going to make it whether I like it or not. So obviously I'm going to root for it. I'm not going to want it to fail, because that's not good for the genre that I love and that I adore. It is only good if it does succeed. I just don't know why we're doing this. You know what I mean? I know why, but you know what I mean. Movie Chat and More sends in £5. Thanks, Richard. Says, hi, Dave. Despite being an almost perfect movie, it frustrates me that Back to the Future gets ranked as the greatest 80s movie when the majority is set in the 50s. Well, Richard, it's because it was made in the 80s. It's an 80s movie. So they're not talking about the time period, right? They're talking about the decade for which it was made. So the technology, the production value, the actors, the distribution, the industry at that time, it's an 80s movie. It is one of the greatest 80s movies ever made. It's not a 1950s movie. They're not talking about the time period. They're talking about when the movie was made. And it is, whether you agree with it or not, factually, it is a 1980s movie. It is set, it was made in the 80s. So it is a 1980s film. And it is one of the greatest 80s movies of all time. It's not a 50s movie. It would make no sense to classify it as a 50s movie. Now, the story, the vast majority of the story takes place in the 50s. Yes, that's true. But it is through the lens of 1980s filmmakers and 1980s technology. And so, it's not the same. It's not the same. I disagree with you. Gentle on James sends in $5. Thanks, buddy. Says, Nightmare on Elm Street X, 10, Freddy in space. If Nancy doesn't wake up screaming, no one can hear her. Ooh, starring Dave McRae's Freddy Krueger. I'm in, man. I'm in. I like that. If Nancy doesn't wake up screaming, no one can hear her. Ooh. I'm in. That'd be so funny. All right, folks, listen, that is going to do it for me here on episode 254 of McRae Live. I want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, you enjoyed today's show. If you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on what I had to say here today and about this prequel coming to Paramount Plus of Rosemary's Baby. Do you agree with what I've had to say? Do you not agree? Do you agree with some of what I had to say? Do you disagree with some of what I had? Jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts down below. I would like to know. Thanks, of course, to all the super chat questions that came in today, and of course to my moderators, Frank Riker, Tap the Short, Darren Sands, Chris Baber, Cody Snyder, and Andrew Stevens. Thank you for doing what you guys do. I really, really appreciate it. To my level number 2 members, don't forget, tomorrow is our next episode of One Good Scare, the All Halloween show, where we will be perusing eBay for some crazy Halloween merch. Don't forget, that is tomorrow. My level number 2 members, if you want to get in on that, consider hitting that join button and joining level number 2. All right, folks, have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you all soon. All right, folks, cheers.